Yeah. Isn't this song great? Okay. Hi, everybody. Great. All right, let's get started. Yay. Hi, loves. So I'm Samantha, and this is Heidi.
Hi.
Hi. And today we are going to dive into the topic of manifestation and love. So me and Heidi met in Shanghai, and we had so many magical kind of moments where we just manifested a lot of things. We used to, the moment that we learned how to manifest, we were like, oh my God, we have to like do this. We went to a coffee shop and we just like talk it up, and we're like, we would just like talk, and then we're like, oh, what if we manifested ice cream? And then like she went to work, and like her boss Jeff just like bought everyone ice cream, and she's like, he never does that. Oh my gosh.
True story. And actually, as you were talking, I just remembered another kind of like manifesting situation that happened that kind of convinced me that all of this is real. Because like when I first met Samantha, I was like, okay, I love the vibe and I love the ideas, but like a big part of me like didn't really believe it and was like really resistant to it. And I was like, no, I mean, how can you just like ask for something and then it comes? That's not how it works. Like you have to do this and this, standard like programmed mindset. But I think when I really got convinced was like, I think I was telling you about a guy that I was like really heartbroken over, that I had met in Taiwan, and it was like just really traumatic for me because like yeah, like I think before that, like maybe just like love situations had been more flowing for me, and this was like the first time I felt really like let down and kind of taken advantage of. And and Samantha was like, well, let's clear it, because this is probably kind of has created like some sort of energetic block, right? Because I haven't let go and I haven't worked through it. So I remember, like, do you remember this?
Yeah, I do.
I'm not going to say his name because he'll probably see this, but like
watching this in the future.
yeah, this is like public. No, it's kidding. It's fine. He knows who he is anyway. But anyway, so yeah, I remember like we sat down together. We did EFT.
Yep.
And I can't remember exactly what we did.
I don't remember the session, but I remember what happened later.
Yeah. And then I think I wrote him in like a letter or email, like we wrote it on the computer together, but I did not send it for sure. And then we just deleted it. And I was like, wow, like I feel so much lighter. And then like, I'm getting chills right now. Literally like that afternoon, I hadn't talked to him in a really long time. He actually wrote me an email or a message, I can't remember, email or Facebook message, being like, hey, how's it going? Like, haven't heard from you in a while, as if he had actually like received the letter.
But didn't you like run into him on the subway or something?
Oh yeah, and then that was like the level 2. So he messaged me, but we still didn't realize that actually we had both moved to Shanghai without knowing it, because I had like deleted him from my Facebook, and I was like, I never want to see this guy again. And then after we did this clearing, one day I was like walking down the street of like Nanjing Road, in Shanghai, and I was like, life is amazing, And I had my headphones in, and then I feel like a touch on my shoulder, and he was like, Heidi, and it was him, and we were just like, oh my god.
Yes, that's what happens when energy clears. I've had so many clients where they're like, oh my God, I haven't seen that person forever. And then they just popped up,
Yeah, and then from then on out, it was like clear. And actually it was funny because we were both like, so is it weird? And we're like, no, it's not weird. Actually, it's cool. And then we hung out like a few times after that. And yeah, it just like the energy totally changed. It was like, yeah, like my clinging energy was gone. And
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it was so great. And I feel like, together we've just seen so many miracles, which is like so cool,
It's true.
Like,
in so many different like kind of categories of life, and
so many different categories. But yeah, we even came together and we were like, I just remember we would just like have these coffee shop meetings, and we would just like talk, and we would just like laugh, and we just like get our energy like so high, and we're like, what if we're in a TV show? And then like the week later, we like go to this martial arts class, and this guy comes up and is like, you guys need to be in a TV show.
Yeah.
And then she was in a TV show. I was in school, but then Heidi got into a
Yeah.
TV show.
Yeah, I was on this TV show for like 6 months, and I mean, it was on some like local TV channel, like very low budget, but it was like, yeah, it actually happened, and people would like recognize me in the subway. They'd be like, "Oh, you're on that show, The Office." It was like the Chinese version of The Office.
But yeah, so we're just sharing that to let you guys know we're legit.
We've manifested a thing or two.
We've manifested a few things. And so, actually, like, Heidi was really there on the very beginning journey of, of so many of I remember her being there for my first Reiki class that I taught. And like the night before, I was just like bawling. I was like, I can't do it. I need to like refund everyone. I should just like.
I remember that.
And then like fast forward a few months later, I was there for Heidi's like first big singing gig, and she was like crying the night before, just like, oh my God, I can't do it. Like.
It was, I remember that I was literally on the couch crying for hours because I was just like, I don't even know how I got this gig. I'm terrible.
But so the thing is, it's like as you're breaking through and as you're moving into your new reality, like your old energy, see, it's like you're moving at the speed of light here. So then your body doesn't have space to hold on to all the other things, So it was like, okay, I'm teaching my first Reiki class, and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted to do, right? But then it's like all this other stuff had to like leave so that there was space for me to be new. And it's the same thing with Heidi. It was like, the crying, like in the moment, it's like, oh my God, what's going on? Like this really great thing just happened for this person. Why? But the crying is like releasing, and just like, it's kind of like, it's grief.
It's all the fear and the self-doubt that was holding you back all this time from like going for what you want, pretty much.
Totally.
Yeah.
Just like it like speed clears, and then you're like on the other side, so.
And sometimes like, like this last year, I've been feeling things like physically, like really, and I have to remind myself actually emotionally, like if I'm also emotionally and mentally feeling clear and feeling something in my body, reminding myself that it's like part of the process, and not like being like, oh, trying to attach some worry thoughts to it and like, oh, it means I'm sick and whatever. And yeah.
Totally. And I think that's the biggest piece, is like your body is actually super intelligent, and sometimes it breaks down because it's helping you clear out stuff, but then we might be like, oh no, this thing's broken, and then it keeps it there longer, instead of being like, hey body, good job, you're doing so good, like you're just like evolving, we're just moving through, so. But anyway, so let's come back to our topic, manifest love.
Yes.
So what are some things, how did you manifest your love, this current love, like how do you feel like that manifested?
So, so like maybe let me rewind a bit, just to give a bit of background. So like I was actually right after we spent that time together in Shanghai, I got into like a very long-term relationship, which kind of, had its ups and downs and ran its course, but like the ending was like really difficult for me. And I think like I knew for a while at the end of the relationship that it's not what I wanted, like in terms of my love relationship in my life. But I just really was kind of holding on to an idea and feeling a lot of guilt because I had promised myself to this person, and we have these contracts, right, in the physical world, and
the energy, right? Yeah.
Sorry.
I said, and in the energetic world, you also have contracts there too.
Yeah, right. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I mean, it was really just within myself that I felt bonded and like I had no choice. But then kind of when I came out of that, I all of a sudden just had this like, just like bursting kind of awakening of like what love is. And I'm getting like chills, like thinking about it, because like, I think I had taken on a lot of ideas from, just like genetic family ties, or like, what you see growing up, that stuff goes really deep.
Of course.
Even though, when I was in college, I was like, whatever, I'm free flowing. I have nothing to do with, any sort of set ideas. Even though you might think that, there's still a lot of things that go deeper. I don't know if I'm expressing that correctly. I don't know. Do you have something to add to that,
Yeah,
Samantha?
I think it's just like just unknown. The thing is, it's like I think you end up being really free when you're younger, and then like as you get older, a lot of these things get triggered like in your DNA and your RNA, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I'm running that same program that my parents were running or that my parents were doing, and you just get caught in the loop and you don't even realize that you're doing it because that family ancestral program that has an energetic momentum that's running. And if you're not really strong in your will, you kind of just like go in that stream, you go in that stream of consciousness, in that wave. And sometimes it takes people a while to like get out of that.
Oh my gosh, that like just summed it up perfect in kind of like a scientific sounding way. That's exactly what happened. It was like when I was in my relationship program, I was like a completely different person.
Yeah. Oh,
And like people around me, like when I was telling them what I was going through in my relationship, they were like, but that doesn't sound anything like you, why don't you just, get a change or like make a change or do something different? And I was like, I don't know. It's just like I was afraid to even like disagree with him.
mm,
Like I would start to feel like panicked if I disagreed on something, or like I felt strongly about something, but I knew that like he didn't agree with it or something. Like I would just kind of like I would hide myself basically to fit into this like relationship structure. And I didn't even realize it because I kind of convinced myself like, this is how I should be in a relationship and I'm happy this way and I want a stable relationship and like everything's fine. But then when you realize actually you're a different person with like certain friends or whatever, and then you're like more and more wanting to go to that side of yourself, then there was a problem, a
yeah.
conflict. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I love that you said, because that does happen. It's like you go into the relationship program, and then also he has his programs and his projections, right? And so it's like all those energies mix together. So then you're like, wait, where am I? Like, who am I? Like, you're almost like in someone else's world.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you were talking about in your first video of the course, talking about like the human design, and like my root is open.
Mm,
So this is something I didn't know, but now like in hindsight, like it makes perfect sense. It's felt like my root was just kind of filled by his programming, and it's not like he like forced himself on me or anything. No, it was like it just like I had an open space and I wasn't aware that I could so easily take on someone else's kind of path when it comes to that area.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, totally. And I think that's why it's so powerful that we have all these tools coming up, like human design and gene keys, and we get to like really look at it and explore and then like make a more conscious decision, like, is this what I actually want? Or was
Mm.
it just so open that I just like allowed someone else's stream to like fill me up?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's really like bizarre to think about because we think we're like this like closed physical structure, but it is not like that at all. It's like we're just connected literally to everything, and things flow in and out like differently depending on who we're with or like how open we are that day. And
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah. Wow.
So how do you feel like you moved out of that,
Okay. So basically like kind of when I separated from him and for the first time was alone in 7 years, it was just like, it was like another downloading period. Like when I met Samantha, it was like downloading period number one, and this was like downloading period number two. And it was just like that Shanghai time, where I was writing constantly, and like every time I meditated, it was like these like things were just like kind of, downloading and washing into my brain. And I was like, whoa, I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. I was like, sometimes like these contracts, I don't want to be like negative, but like the way that I entered this contract was like, I felt like bonded by it. and not supported by it. I know that some other people can, go into like a marriage contract and it's a different idea, but I wasn't aware of these things, So I felt like limited by it. And I felt like more and more as like my spirit wanted to like grow and evolve, this was like holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like number one, what I wanted to manifest like in my relationships going forward was like freedom. Absolutely. Like that was like the biggest thing. And I realized that there's not one there's not, you can't like selectively be like open or closed.
Right.
It's like you're either open or you're closed, right? So I kind of misinterpreted this. This is going to be like a bit funny. I thought that, okay, I have to be open. Then I immediately like related it to open relationship. And I was like, oh, well, the only way that I can be completely open and completely free in myself is I need to be in an open relationship. So that's like a whole other topic. I kind of like explored that a little bit, not in too much depth because I quickly realized this was also not for me,
Much, yeah.
Not so much because I also realized just my personality type, Taurus, I guess, I don't know if that means something, but I do feel like, it's like I do value like stability and depth in a relationship. And I feel like just like for me personally, um, I'm not able to be like emotionally involved with like multiple people at once. I just cannot,
Totally, totally. That makes so much
So
sense.
so that was like step two. So it was like this evolving process of like, okay, freedom, openness, but okay, not that kind of openness.
Experimenting, like, oh, that's too open. Okay.
Yeah, but what is actually amazing since we're talking about manifesting, literally the minute that I started talking about like, I really think open relationship is the only way to go. And I'm saying this as if it was like the truth, I'm like telling all my friends in Chiang Mai about this. And I started like manifesting people into my life that were also on this path. I had some good friends at the yoga studio I went to that were in an open relationship, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like I can totally do this. And then I met someone and kind of fell in love with someone who this was his lifestyle, and funny, right? It's just literally like
Fast.
maybe a few weeks after I like decided this is what I wanted. So that happened. And then the more that we got involved and the more I kind of like fell in love with him, the more I realized like this lifestyle isn't for me because it just felt too confusing to me to hear about like, his other partners and
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I just like, it really like stressed me out. And I was like, okay, wait, this isn't what I want in my life. Like, I don't need more stress. Okay, so I want openness, but I also want like security. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think I was also like judging myself like, oh, security is like a bad thing, And I didn't know if you had something to add to that. I was like, sorry, I feel like I'm just talking.
No, I mean, it totally makes sense. Like safety and I mean, safety and security, that's like one of the key things that we need as humans, And so it's like, um, but I think with you with like an open route, so then it's kind of like, to me, like, yeah, it would just be too much, you would just be like, where am I? You would,
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly what I felt like. Yeah.
it's so
So
great though, like, as you're talking about that, it's like we have all these different combinations of our human design, like, and different people, right? And it's like, how do we figure out the configuration that's like right for you, you know?
yeah, absolutely. Because for him, I could tell like this is how he feels in his element, this is what works for him. Like, he feels excited about having different partners and like, and flowing and just, he's like not in one place, I think, for very long. So it's like it works for his lifestyle. But for me, it's like I really wanted someone, that would travel through life with me and grow with me. And I want to like, just build a life together, so yeah.
Totally.
Um,
But it's so great because it's like, I just feel like knowing your soul resonance, like understanding that blueprint, just helps you so much, because I feel like I have that same thing where I'm like, oh, I just want freedom and I just want to be open. And I always kind of like experiment with like having an open relationship or whatever. But it's like, but then when it's like actually going to happen, I'm like, nope, that's not what I really want. But like
Yeah.
conceptually, it seems like that seems great, you know? But then in practice, it's kind of like, wow, what does that really mean? And you know, it's interesting because I didn't really think about like what you said with like you're hearing about all these, you know, it's just kind of like too much information. It's like, you know, hearing
Yeah,
about
and I
friends and all that stuff, right? I'm like,
yeah.
that's where I thought this talk was going, but
No, it's all good. I think it's important also because it's like, I just want to also share that it was like really a process. So it was
absolutely.
like right now, I'm like really happy with how things are going. Along the way, there were like it's a lot of like just trying things out. And sometimes you think that's what you want to manifest. And then, people say, be careful what you wish for because like, yeah.
Yeah,
then
totally.
you then you get it and then you realize, oh wait, maybe that's not what I wanted.
Yeah, I know. And I was just talking about that yesterday where I was like, I think we don't really know what we want. Like, we think we know what we want, but a lot of us don't really know. Like, it's almost like we can't know until we dive in and like we just do it,
Mm,
you know, and we do it and we experiment with it, experience it. And then we're like, whoa, that's like so much. Or like, oh, this is my sweet spot. Like, this is what feels really good for me. You know,
yeah.
it's like you just kind of have to like play around with it a little bit.
Right. And I just want to add, I think like also on the way there, I think like for me, I've often gotten stuck in just like the mind trap of like, thinking about all the possibilities and not going for any of them. So then you feel stuck. And then you're like, oh, well, like manifestation is bullshit. No, I'm just kidding. Or like, no, I'm kidding. But like, you know what I mean? Because then you feel like, well, why aren't things moving? And it's because you have to actually take that step and be like, just start saying like, this is what I want and just try it out. And then,
Totally. Like you just have to do it and try it and experience it. And I also feel like as you do it, then you're gonna fine tune and realize like, oh, you know what? Like this isn't really what I wanted. I actually wanted it more like this. You know, it's like it's just always this like fine tuning process, you know. I feel like that
yeah,
with business and everything, but especially relationships for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, there's so much to talk about. I wanted to like bring up a whole other thing, but I think it goes more in like the wealth manifesting money category, which we'll talk about next week,
We'll
right?
talk about next. So you'll want to stay tuned because there's going to be more. I was like, people are just getting to know us. Um, so yeah, so the next piece okay. So when I manifested Angel,
Mm,
my current partner, it was like my mom went to Taiwan and she was going to be gone for 3 months. And in my mind, it was just kind of like, okay, she's going to be gone. I'm going to have more space to do my own thing. And I remember just being like, all right, by the time she's gone, I want to do these 3 things. And one of them was like, I'm going to manifest my person. And I went out to get drinks with my friend Jessie, and she said something like, she's like, "Oh my God, we need to just get you on Tinder." And she met her husband on Tinder, so then she made me this like Tinder account, and I was like, whatever, you know, we're just having wine and we're just like laughing and all this stuff. And then that night I went home and did a meditation, and I was like, yeah, why haven't I found my person yet? And then I spent like 2 hours just like going in and like just imagining like my person's like right here. And
mm.
this person like took me and traveled all over the world and like handed me like wads of cash, like and just like, you know, just basically like just did all the things that like I wanted to have happen in my fantasy world. And I just
Mm.
like, and I remember like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm afraid of it. I noticed in my body where I was like kind of shaking and I was like repelling it. And it was just in my imagination, you know, it was just like a meditation. So it was like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Like it was just like, I just went as long as I could until this like fear feeling, like just was gone, and it was like neutral. And then I was like, all right, I'm done. And then I met Angel like 2 days later.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was like, he's like, he was like basically like the next day I was like, oh my God, I found who I'm gonna marry. And he told his business partner too. He's like, oh my gosh, I found who I'm gonna marry. Like, and like, and there was like a few things, like he like totally cleaned he like took my car and like cleaned it. And I was like, whoa, I don't know. No one's ever done that. I
Wow.
was like, that's huge. I had a yoga studio at the time, so my trunk was like just loading stuff all the time.
And this is someone you just met.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, I just like gave this guy my keys like to my car. Like he literally, he could have just taken my car or something.
That's love.
Yep, that's love. But anyway, so it was just interesting. And it was like, in the beginning, it was like he had like such a huge heart resonance. But he wasn't necessarily like my person in my like higher imagination. But now
Mm.
that we've been together for 3 years, it's like, whoa, he's literally like on my whole list. Like it was like because I was like, oh, I want someone that does graphic designing. Boom, he like works on websites, does graphic design. Like he started like as a mailman, and then like suddenly became a massage therapist, and then all of a sudden is like, so I'm like, what's happening? It was like everything that I wanted, like it's just happening,
Wow. Oh my gosh, we are soul sisters. I've also been with my partner for 3 years. And that resonated with me also what you said about like, what he wasn't like exactly what I was kind of imagining. And actually at the time when I was like journaling, when I was with the guy that was more into the open relationship thing, I was still thinking like, this could be the guy if only he decided he just wants to not be in an open relationship. So as I'm writing this, I'm still like imagining him, or imagining someone like slightly like him, or something. And but I was also writing about like my honest feelings and what I'm not okay with. And this whole time I'm also communicating with him openly, and we talked about all this, and um, you know, and then actually when my current partner did pop into my life, I didn't even like recognize him at all. I mean, like I met him actually in this like crazy bar area in Chiang Mai that usually I don't even really go to, but that night we happened to go out like as a group, like with like the people from yoga. And it was a really weird night for me because actually I had run into my previous partner of 7 years, and he pretended he didn't know me.
Oh.
So it was a really like weird and tough night for me. But like, what are the chances that on that same night this tall handsome guy comes up to me and is like like I was just standing on the street like taking a break from dancing. We were all like dancing in this like funk club, and he just comes up to me and he's like, oh hey, how's it going? I'm like, oh hey, it's like very comfortable like from moment number one. But I never thought we would be like together for 3 years after that meeting.
I know. I just like the universe just knows the fastest, most efficient route.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, and it was so funny. It was like actually I kind of was also like not super open to him at the time because I was like still kind of hoping for this other relationship to work out. And I even told him that when I met him, I'm like, no, I'm like in love with another guy, and then we just kept running into each other though, and I was like, okay, I think this is happening. The universe is like, you asked, and
It's
please.
here. Take it. Like, come on.
Here, go ahead. We're just gonna. Hey.
Oh my gosh. And so how do you feel about this current relationship then? Like, is it like what you wanted and all those things? We're like,
So, I mean, I think every relationship is like, everything's a journey, right? So it's just like when we started hanging out, like we had no idea that it was going to evolve into this. And, I think like at the beginning, of course, of any relationship, you have that feeling of absolute freedom and, just letting it flow and whatever. And, and I think the challenges come when it kind of falls into then, you've been together for a while, and then kind of like that, that freedom and flow, like that was there in the beginning, is like maybe like lessens a little bit. You know what I mean? Just because like that's kind of just how I think like the hormones work and the flow and everything like that. So, I mean, 3 years during that time, I don't know if you can relate to your relationship also, but it's like during that time, it's like you're building like a different kind of love and a different connection. And I think, and also then kind of balancing, because two people, have their soul path and what they want to experience in life and whatever. So, that I think has been like the biggest challenge with us, because both of us are like very like, we're kind of the same in that sense, very adventurous, very freedom loving. So, you know, 2020 was like a bit of a challenge, because it was like one of us was wanting to move faster, one of us slower, and like finding that balance of like, okay, can we find something that we're both really excited about? And we kind of had to face that maybe, maybe there is that point where actually we just want different things.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's always going to be with every relationship, because just like you said, it's like two spirits are wanting to grow and evolve and move, and you never know like which way this plant wants to grow,
Yeah.
I want more sun, like I want to be in the shade.
Yeah, I just want to chill for a year, and the other person's like, I want to go, go, go.
Totally. And I think that is like that fine dance, but I also feel like, when people really learn to charge up their own energy field, like when you're listening to spirit, when you're meditating, when you're doing the things to like love up on your body, there's an energetic charge up that happens. And I think like initially when two people are attracted to each other, it's like each person's really in their own vibe. They're really
True.
in their own vibe. And so there's the polarity, and that creates that magnetism. But then a lot of times, like then in partnership, you kind of like you compromise and you do all these things. So then like your individual light is not the same, it's not as bright, and that attraction kind of simmers because you think you don't have permission to be yourself.
Yeah.
But actually the thing is like you have to be yourself even more in relationship
Yeah.
to keep that magnetism and keep that attraction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like the challenge that actually we have just been through, because there was a point about, I don't know, a few months ago where it was like, I think both of us are very like, I don't know like what it's called in the love languages, but both of us are like very giving people,
Mhm.
and like very like accommodating to the other person, so it's like sometimes
Like
we'll be in this. Sorry.
just like nice, it's like, oh, I want to be nice, or I want to be polite.
Yeah, exactly. Like I want to please you. I want to, make sure you're happy with the choice. What do you want first? So often we would have this like funny conversations like, "Oh, where do you want to go?" "I don't know. Where do you want to go?" "No, you can choose." "No, you can choose."
Yeah,
It's
totally.
like, and then we just get confused. I think like both of us like maybe just got even a bit confused and lost touch with like what we authentically want, and we're not like, first of all, not in touch with it or expressing it. And then there came a point where things just felt like off,
Yeah.
and we didn't know why. And then like now actually like it kind of now things have shifted a lot. I realized for me it was like I haven't been doing yoga, and that's something that like keeps me in balance and in tune with myself. I haven't been dancing, I haven't been doing yoga. I've just been like doing my online teaching and been like travel adventure mode, which is cool too, but it's just like it's not like 100% me, and I haven't been doing the things that nourish me.
Yeah, totally. And also, it's like you have that sacral, it's like your sacral yes and your sacral no. So like instead of making decisions from the head, making decisions from your sacral,
Mm,
for you as a generator, like for both of us as like these single definition generators, like that's going to be helpful. It's just like,
yeah.
oh, like this is my uh-huh and this is my uh-uh. Like this is how I make my authentic decision. And then when you lead the way of like you making authentic decisions on your own, then your partner also knows how to respond because you're being authentic. So then he's like, oh, wait, I have permission to be authentic too, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like both of us were afraid to say how we really feel because we were afraid that we were going to lose each other, you know?
Of course.
And but like then it's like if you don't express those things along the way, then we had to work through so much like, you know, sadness and frustration that was built up like all from this time.
Totally.
You know, like in the time that we were in Vietnam, you know, it was like he was really wanting to move forward and move to a new place. But because I like wasn't ready and I was kind of afraid to move to a new place, he kind of just like kept all that inside. And, you know, all of that is going to build up and it's going to like pollute the relationship, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, how can you have these micro currents of like being honest in the moment, being honest and just being like, hey, this is really hard to share, but this is how I'm feeling, you know?
Yeah. Microcurrents. I love that because it can be something really small. Like you don't feel like going to that place for dinner, but then you just say okay because you don't want to have a discussion or you don't want to upset the other person or they seem excited so you want to make them happy. But then later you're going to give off that energy of like this is not what I want.
Yeah, totally. And it's those tiny little everyday things. And then all of a sudden you've got all this like energetic mud happening. You're like, oh God, I didn't express or say any of these things. And now it's just like, you know, and then you're not seeing that person for who they are. You're seeing all of your internal unexpressed emotions instead of that person, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is kind of like a subtopic of the manifesting. I think like, you know, you know, stage one is like, yeah, you manifest the qualities that you want and kind of the feeling that you want. And I feel like that part is actually in a way like not that difficult.
Right? Like that's like the easy part.
Yeah. That's like the easy part, you know, like, open relationship, bam, there he is, you know, like but then the other part is then like dancing with it and like manifesting the kind of relationship you want like day to day. And that's like I feel like what you said. I feel like it's these microcurrents of, you know, energy exchange and like tuning into yourself and having enough time to like, you know, also know what your own energy is wanting to do. And
And it's easy to accidentally be like, oh, like complaining about that person, you know, like,
mm,
oh, that person's doing this and it's his fault or she did that or, you know, and the thing is, it's like, you know, me and Susan Glavin, we used to teach a course called Modern Day Mastery, and we would have this contrast clarity list. And
mm,
the contrast is like everything that you don't like about what's happening or whatever. And then you cross out what you don't like and you write the opposite. So for Angel, I'd be like, oh, like I wish he was like more social, you know. I wish
mhm.
he was like singing more. And like literally it's like I wrote these things down, and the next day he's like singing all throughout the house. I'm like, what's happening? He's like singing in the shower, walking around, he's singing. And then that whole week, every night he was like, hey babe, I'm going out with my friends. I'm like, what? Like 3 months where he didn't go out, and then all of a sudden I'm writing like my person's really social, and he like went out like every night, and I'm like, wait, let's tone that down a little.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so it's like our thought waves are affecting our partners so much. And I think the thing is like
Mm.
we think our partner is like very solid, you know, we think that they're like this like solid thing where they always show up the same way, but they're not. They're just malleable. It's like everything's just malleable. We live in this like hologram, this like blank slate, and we're kind of like constantly programming everything around us, you know.
That's true. And I think like something that you taught me like back in Shanghai when I was just learning about this stuff is like to always like, you know, see someone in their highest light, you know, because you have the power to do that, you know, and it
Yeah.
changes things, you know, but it's like if you look at someone and you think like, they're in a bad mood, they're bringing the energy down and kind of in a blaming, like negative way, instead of being like, like, you know, how are you feeling? Or like, you know, or change the energy, you know, just be like, hey, let's do this. And then you quickly, you know, change whatever's happening. And
So
yeah,
fast.
sorry.
It happens so fast, you know,
Yeah.
just like seeing the highest version of that thing, that person, that space, that whatever. And I think that's like, it's like whether it's like the beginning of a relationship or the beginning of a business or whatever it is, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, there's always a beginning, and the beginning can be really beautiful and sparkly, but also sometimes it can be rough, and you just got to keep committing until it becomes really beautiful,
That's true, because also in the beginning, maybe it's like, actually in the beginning, I wasn't so sure if we were like 100% suited for each other, because it was like we just came from such kind of, I mean, not such different backgrounds, but it was like, I don't know, like he had come from, I don't know, like a really high paid job in the Middle East, and like, with like a lot of income, and I was like, living in this little like wooden Thai style house in Chiang Mai, and like and it just felt like at the beginning I'm like, oh, I just don't know if it's a good fit, and then he like moved into my place, and I was like, oh, I guess this is happening. And so I think that like at the beginning, what I'm trying to say is I think at the beginning there's a lot of uncertainty, and like also, judgments that come in, oh, this is this kind of person, this is not going to work, or it is going to work, or what, whatever. And I think it's like the most important thing, like when you, okay, so stage one have manifested, and then this person comes, and then two is like not judging it.
Right.
I think that's like the really difficult part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, because like for instance, sometimes like this perfect solution comes into your life, right? And it's like, but that perfect solution has their own flaws, so it's like, either if it's your perfect person that comes in, it's like they may not be how you thought in your imagination, right? But then it's like you just like you love on what's in front of you, and you love on it, and you tend to it, and then it just like it molds and it changes, and then something beautiful gets created, but I think like we have like this society that's like, oh, I don't like this whatever anymore, and I just discard it or whatever, it's like instead of like giving time to like to really like love on and paint and play and fine
Yeah.
tune, you're kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, that didn't work or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And giving it a chance, not like immediately assuming like, oh, this is a deal breaker. Like I saw him smoking. Like, what's really amazing is actually like when we first started hanging out, like I hadn't really been drinking that much in a long time, but then when we started hanging out, we were like in this party mode, and we went to Pai, which is like in northern Thailand. And we just went on this like bender and like did mushrooms together. Like, we had just met each other, but it just felt like so magical and comfortable. And like, he made me laugh so hard. Like I almost peed in my pants like 5 times. So then we didn't see each other for a while, because I went back to Shanghai for a gig, and he actually flew out to China to see me. And I was like so nervous, because I was just like, I had all these like ideas. I was like, oh no, like I think it's not a good fit. He's really like a party guy, and I don't know, like this is just, but anyway, I was so afraid, but at the same time I really wanted him to come, of course. So I was like, oh my God, he's coming. And then it was funny. It was like one of the very first nights we hung out, we talked about it. And I was like, like I have to be honest, like, I don't usually like drink that much, like, and he was like, me neither, me neither. He's like, usually I'll have like one beer in the evening or something, because I was like, and he was like, I was thinking the same thing. I can't keep this up,
But it's like in the beginning you're like kind of like trying to impress each other.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's never good to assume, and always just be as honest as possible. It just be 100% honest. Yeah.
Totally. But like I said, it's like I think there's this molding time, and there's commitment, and then there's space to like let this person evolve, and like let you evolve, and then see what gets created from it, instead of like, oh, there was a spark, oh, now the spark's gone, so now it's like over, or what, however that shows up.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, sometimes I think you said it exactly. It's like if you're not really centered in yourself and in your own flow, like that is where the spark comes from. Like
Yes.
spark from one person and spark from the other person, they spark each other. But it's like if you have lost your own spark, because, or sparkle, or whatever, you know what I mean? If you're not in tune with it, then, the way to think about it, I think, is not like, oh, it's the relationship, it's the other person, or it's us together that's wrong. I think the first kind of remedy, or like the way to find the spark again, is like, it's always within you, right?
Yeah, it's really like, okay, what lights me up? What feels really good? What do I want to do here? Like, what's going to be fun here? And it's like you not compromising and not settling. It's like in your own universe first, like not settling for yourself in any area first, and then getting that filled up, and then you get to see like, well, how's my partner showing up when I'm tending to myself first.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I did start doing this in my previous relationship that I was talking about, the long-term one. And I was like getting more in touch with myself. I did a yoga teacher training, and a few other things. Like I started getting into this dance meditation, and I was like more and more in my spark. And the reaction was actually really negative. And I really tried to like share this with him, and and I wanted to like be my authentic self and see if we could still flow together. And it was just,
Well,
you know
at that point, I also feel like what happens, like when you're ready to separate, it's like
mm,
you're just not in the same place anymore. Like you're
yeah.
literally like in a different dimension. Because every time I've like began the process of breaking up or whatever, it was like all of a sudden I just didn't see this person anymore. It was like my light waves were at such a different level that I was like, oh, I'm like trying to connect, but like I don't see them anymore. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. That's a really good way of describing it. And actually, I could feel him like trying to like pull me back into the other dimension that we were in together, but I was just not in it anymore. I was like really wanting to go out, and he felt that, and he was like, "No, come back." And yeah, I don't know, and it sucks, it's a difficult process, but yeah, I think, we did have some really like good times together. And I feel like, now, of course, in retrospect, we were different people, but now, like, if I talk to my previous self, I would tell myself to be just much more confident and in tune with what I know. Of course, I didn't know at the time, and that was the lesson of the whole thing, but
You always know less than you think you know, right? Until like, because when you're in it, you're like, wait, I'm at my fullest right now. Like, what are you talking?
yeah.
And then later in retrospect, you're like, oh, I see.
But in a way, like, I was at my fullest, like at that point in time, if you know what I mean, because I did also, at that point in time, I was also like expanding in other ways. Like I was really focusing on like developing my singing career. And in that sense, like I felt really like full, and maybe it was enough expansion at that time, if that makes sense. I don't know.
And he maybe was that rock for you. Like maybe
Yeah,
he
he was.
so that you could do all of those other things too. Everything
You know,
always
it's
perfectly.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like at the time, actually, many times throughout the relationship, I really felt like this is the perfect thing for me. I wasn't being dishonest in that sense, because I think he was really disappointed at the end, and was like, what? This was all a lie, and all those things you said and whatever. But it's not like that. It's like along the way, you mean all those things.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, it's like you said, like you just, maybe you shift faster than someone else, and then it's just, yeah, or shift differently. I shouldn't say faster, it's not like better, it's just like different.
Well, I think it's like people vibe together and buzz together because their thought waves are similar, you know
Yeah.
and so it's like the moment that the thought wave like isn't the same anymore. And I think it's really hard at first because like maybe you evolved super fast all of a sudden, and then you're like, oh my gosh, where's all my friends? It's like there's no one around me anymore because you just like jumped out into this other dimension. So you kind of have to like wait a minute and be like, okay, I'm like high up in this new dimension, and like I gotta wait for my new friends to show up, or I have to wait for some of my other friends to get to this space. um and I think when people jump to that portal, a lot of times they're like, oh no, I should go back,
Yeah.
because it's like so scary because you're in the leading edge. You're like, oh my god, I'm in the leading edge and there's no one else here.
I was really like scared for sure. Yeah. And like I would have like for like several weeks when I was going through this like separation process, every morning I would wake up at 4 a.m. and I would literally feel like my kind of, I don't know if it's like my soul or something like floating into my body. And I would be like, no, 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 no. I'd be like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And then I would like wake up in my body and I'd be like, just like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to be here.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not ready to be embodied. This is too much.
But then it got better really quickly once I just like, I had a lot of like, repressed emotions, that I had to process. So it was like a really big like catharsis during that time, probably like the biggest one I've experienced. So that it was rough, but like,
Oh man, so good. Um, yeah, so I'm wondering if we should rename this.
it was more like, I think it's like, yeah, it brought up like a very interesting answer, even for us, because like, we're talking about manifesting love. And I think it's like, well, we were more talking about specifically in relationships, but yeah, it's like, actually, yeah, there's this whole, these different phases that come in and they require kind of a different kind of awareness and a
Totally.
different orientation.
Yeah,
Sorry.
each
Yeah.
each step that you're in, it's like that's okay. I think I was like, this whole time we get to this one point here because I think you're like, okay, like where's my list? How do I manifest love? And then you manifest love, and then you're like, boom, that person's here, and you don't realize you have to keep manifesting love all along the way.
Yeah.
It's like manifesting love is like an everyday practice.
That's true. 100%. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No matter what phase you're in, like whether you're like totally single or like going on dates or like in a long-term thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just like the cultivating love, it's like that cultivation of love, that's like a daily thing. That's like a micro moment thing. Like how do I cultivate love now in this moment? How do I bring more love into my body in this moment? And it's like, and I think that the logical, that linear mind is like, oh well, I got the thing, I got the person, like I got the
Yeah.
house, I got the car, but it doesn't think about like, okay, well now how do I maintain that love? How do I like continue to spark up and nourish and nurture
Yeah.
this love?
Yeah. And maintain does not mean now I hold on to and control. I think that's like one of the big lessons. You know what I mean? Because it's really subtle. It's not, no one thinks they go out to hold on and control things. No one thinks that, but like, it's really subtle. Like, so it's like, yeah, like, so it's like you always want to be like nourishing and supporting and also holding an open space for like the reality of what's there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Rather than trying to kind of being like, I want it to be like this and you should stay the same, or like, I don't know, it just things that come up in relationships a lot,
Yeah, totally.
where I
I
think
think
that this, yeah.
that should probably be another video. We'll break down like control versus freedom or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think that's like a huge topic. You know what I mean? Like, just like it's the thing is like, you don't know you're being controlled when you're in it, and you don't maybe know that you're being controlling.
Right. And it could be something as like, innocent sounding as like expectation, but expectations can be really heavy, like in your own mind. And also you might not even be aware of like how you're adjusting yourself to fit what you think the other person's expectations are. You know what I mean? So it's like a multi-layered kind of confusion that's holding you back from just being authentic.
Yeah, totally. It's like this micro manipulation distortion, and then over, over time, your body's like, like your body breaks down, and like the energy just feels heavy. It doesn't feel like that lightness anymore.
Absolutely. And I feel like I'm just shifting out of that. Like I went through a period like last fall where like I would finish work at like 2 p.m. and I would just be like exhausted. I'd have to take like a 2 hour nap in the afternoon. And it's like, that's so not like me. I'm usually like very high energy, but I was just like, oh my God, I can like barely do anything. And I think it's just because, it was like too much thinking. And anyway, there's so many ways to discuss this. We're getting a little off topic now. Sorry.
But we did so good. This was Manifest Love with Samantha and Heidi.
So I just want to, can I just say one little thing before we sign off?
Yeah.
So like I kind of, this example just popped in my mind when you were speaking about like cultivating love just in your daily life, and this was something actually like I disagreed with like my previous guy about. I was talking about like I was like biting into like a wagga sandwich. Remember waggas from Shanghai? And I was just like, oh, like I love this sandwich. It's amazing.
Side note, that was one of my favorite things about Heidi, because like we'd go eat and we're like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
We're like having a food orgasm, and people were just like, what drugs are you guys on?
Like
Do
we
you
were
remember?
not on anything. People always thought we were like high or something.
Well, we are high, but just from enjoying things so much.
Right.
Do you remember I bit into that carrot cake from Waga's? I started crying. I was like,
Yes.
okay, so this is one of the many ways to cultivate love, just like that love feeling, right? And I was like biting into the sandwich, and then he says to me, he was like, you shouldn't use that word so lightly. And this to me illustrates everything about how you can block yourself from having love, or you can just fully dive into love like at any moment, and it's like it's your choice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, to just like elaborate on that, like, like Heidi's a Taurus, so she's very like sensory, like touch is like a huge deal for her, so so
Food.
and I don't know what it is in my chart, but I'm also like that. I'm like, oh, this is so good. It's like but it's like when you feel someone else like enjoying something to that level, you feel that and you're like, oh my God, like I'm enjoying it even more now too.
Yeah.
And I think I just remember going on this one day and I'm like, oh my God, look at the leaves. They're so amazing. They're like sparkling and like this person's like, what? you know? But I think that's how you cultivate these micro moments of love is
Mm.
like you're in love with you're in love with life, you're in love with
Yeah.
like the creation of energy of life of all these things, and the more you're just like cultivating that happens in your body, and then that happens with your partner and all those things.
Totally. And when you're in that flow, it's like you cannot even help like all the things that flow to you, you're just like, wow, there's even more. And just like it's like too much. No.
Totally. And that I didn't get to talk about this because I was like, and we're wrapping up, but I do want to talk about it for a minute. But I think it's
Yeah.
about being ready. It's like being ready and prepared, because just like you said, the universe is like wanting to gush like really good things at you, right? And then if you're like I'm not ready, I can't receive that, then it's like the ball came and it just like flew past you instead of like ball catch.
Yeah. For sure, for sure. That's why they say open, like I'm open. You
I'm
know?
open. Like bring it in, all of it in. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of that practice, too. It's like maybe your partner's like, hey, I've been trying to give you love right here, and you're like, hey, I'm busy, I'm doing this thing, and you're like not receiving it. Over time, your partner's like, well, they're not going to receive it anyways, so what's the point?
Yeah. And I think also when you do receive those things, like you said, recognize them and really like, feel the gratefulness also, I'm not saying like you should feel grateful, but I think if you really observe those things and before quickly moving on to the next thing, it's like then that like it grows even more.
Totally. It's just like taking a moment to like soak it in. You know, it's like you lean back, you relax, and you're like, so good.
Yeah.
So good, you know? And then it builds up your aura, it builds up that energy, and then boom, the next good thing just comes along, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. And we're at 11:11. Well, it's 11:10. So we're gonna end this episode with a plug for the Oracle codes. So the Oracle Code is going to be an 11-day course, and it's really just like transforming your perspective, because how you see the world is how the world's going to mirror itself back to you. And you know, and I think you've seen with me and Heidi's talk, like a lot of times, like there's these layers that you just don't notice, you don't even know to see, or you know, you might be like, okay, I'm stuck in this, but really like you just shift your perspective a little bit and you realize like, oh, the universe is actually working for me here, but like I can't see how the universe is working for me. But when you realize like there's this bigger picture, like the universe has this like bigger picture laid out, then you can kind of be like, oh, like let me just surrender a little bit more, let me relax a little bit more, let me trust a little bit more, let me realize the universe is rearranging all the pieces for me, and like your only job is to just like enjoy the ride. You know, just like, how can I be in more joy here? How can I be in more joy here? And then all the things that you're wanting to manifest and create can like come in so much faster.
Absolutely.
Yay!
And I just want to like, can I add like one more little thing? I just want to say like, you know, I feel like I had lost touch with this flow a little bit, you know, like I was in a little bit of like a dark space. And then you know, Samantha and I like reconnected just like really like kind of strongly out of after a while of not having, you know, talked or whatever. And you know, like, and I watched your one of your videos from your last course, and it's kind of started like this new kind of opening for me. I guess you call them like opening portals or whatever.
Yeah, so that was Sparkle Academy Business Matrix Energetics, also available at solit.co.
She's serious, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead. So yeah, and open portal.
Yeah. So like I feel like I had already like started opening the portal a little bit, and then we started talking, and it's like the more that you kind of like talk about this and put energy towards it and like kind of open up your awareness to kind of like what you're creating, you know, and then from there it just like snowballs. And like since we talked last week, I was saying like I want more music in my life, and I want to be doing more of like, you know, things that I love. And then I just recorded the most amazing video today with like this amazing harp player here in Novi Sad, and it was just like everything. It was like one of those magical moments where just like the timing was perfect. Like I walk out of the apartment and the bus that I had never taken before like pulls up at the exact moment. And you know, and like then her mom like gave me these homemade earrings that she made here today. They're
Wow,
like
amazing.
stitched, you know, and it was just like, what, like how can everything be so amazing? And
So
it can.
yeah, it can, and it can get even more amazing. I think that's the thing. It's like energetic capacity, like holding more space, you know. So
And just opening yourself, yeah, to those things.
to more things. Yay. I'm hoping that you know, we weren't able to check the audio or anything, so hopefully all this worked, but we'll see.
Right, it's like the whole video is just like silent mouths moving.
Potentially. I have no idea.
I guess we'll see on the replay.
On the replay. Anyways, we love you guys so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, and we'll be here again very soon. And our next topic is going to be on manifesting wealth, right? Manifesting wealth or
Yes.
manifesting business. Yeah,
Cool.
one of those
Yeah.
things. Okay, ciao, babes. Bye.
Bye.